The Chiefs might have the MVP, the Defensive Player of the Year, and the Offensive Player of the Year. The pass rush looks great. They're in command of the AFC West. There's a lot to talk about, and not a lot of time to do it. Let's talk some Chiefs. Welcome to Monday Mornings with the Chief in the North. I'm Seth Keysor, the Chief in the North. And as you can see, I'm celebrating today. Well, Seth, how can we see that? Well, you can see that because I've chosen to wear silver and black. Well, Seth, that's insane. Why would you do such a thing? Just to celebrate the fact that the AFC West, as represented by the silver and black here, plus, let's face it, I don't have that many suits. It represents that the AFC West is firmly in control of the Chiefs. These colors, they no longer belong to the Raiders. They belong to you and me, just like the AFC West belongs to the Chiefs, at least as of right now. We're going to talk about that shortly. The Chiefs beat the Chargers in dramatic fashion yet again. I am under the weather, and I was hoping that I would get to sit back and watch a relaxing game, which down the stretch, it looked like it might be before Jerick McKinnon uncharacteristically fumbled. But of course, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce being who they are, it didn't really matter in the end. There's a lot to talk about, and we're going to get into all of it. Every Monday, what we try to do here is take a look at some of the main storylines that are stemming from the previous game. That's what I'm going to try to talk about briefly. There's a bunch of them, and there's so many things I want to write about, and I haven't even written anything yet because last night what I did was rather than go write an article, I instead went into a coma for a while, which was fun. So let's talk first and foremost about Patrick Mahomes, and starting off with the fact that the Chiefs have arguably three of the best 10 players in the NFL, maybe 15, on their roster. Patrick Mahomes is at the front of the MVP conversation again. Should have been starting a couple weeks ago, but, bygones be bygones. But now it's pretty much universal. There's no one else that's up there with him right now. Josh Allen could catch him again. Tua, if he continues to do what he's doing, there just aren't a lot of players that belong in the conversation with Patrick Mahomes. And we saw it yet again. How many times do we have to see it? Well, I hope I see it a million more times because it's a whole lot of fun. I had basically, if you want to have an understanding of why Patrick Mahomes is one of the main storylines yet again coming out of that game, it would be this. When the Chargers scored, I wasn't that worried. My thought was actually late in the game. They scored with like a minute 40 left to go, something like that. My initial thought when they scored was, okay, good. It happened quickly. Because my concern was that it would happen with 5 seconds left or something like that. And what everyone thought, everyone in the NFL universe, regardless of, whether Mahomes threw an interception late against the Bills and that kind of thing, what everyone thought was, oh, that's way too much time. And it was actually so much time that the Chiefs scored with, it was like 37 seconds left to go, something like that, to where Herbert had a chance to try to do the same thing. He couldn't. And it was glorious. Patrick Mahomes is the most valuable player in the NFL. I'm not sure anyone else comes close. And a thought exercise for your friends who are perhaps Dolphins fans or something like that would be to do something very simple. Ask them what would happen if the Chiefs and the Dolphins were on the phone and one of them broached the subject of trading players. Who says no? That's obviously hilarious because the Dolphins could offer Tua and Tyreek Hill, and the Chiefs would say no. They could offer Tua, Tyreek Hill, and a first-round draft pick, and the Chiefs would say no. If you really want to know who the most valuable player is, that's the easiest way to tell it. It is Patrick Mahomes. It's very easy. Of course, he's not doing it alone. Before we start talking about the help that he got last night, keep in mind to hit the like, subscribe, do all the YouTube things that are silly but incredibly important, and also allow you to follow along with this channel every time that an episode drops or another video, whether it's Dan, Gary, Ryan, myself. Make sure to do that. Hit those buttons. They're probably somewhere around here is my guess. Maybe here. I don't know. Somewhere like that. Next on the list of things to talk about, one of the main storylines this week should be Travis Kelce. He set the record for most 100-yard games by a tight end, continuing to statistically destroy pretty much every record we've seen from tight ends. The only question that we'll have will be the longevity stats, whether he ever catches up with Tony G because of how long Tony was able to maintain. Kelce's 33 years old. He's as great as he ever was. And it's incredible to watch. He's always open. He's incredible after the catch. And he did it against Derwin James, who has probably gotten the better of him more than any other player that I've ever seen him matched up against. That crossing route was a thing of beauty to win the game. His work after the catch, it was just unbelievable. It's so much fun to watch. And how blessed Chiefs fans are right now to watch Mahomes and Kelce together. It's just been such an incredible thing. And it's so cool watching a player that they're going to be talking about for decades and decades. And right now, the Chiefs have multiple guys like that on their roster in Mahomes and Kelce. And then arguably the next guy that I want to talk about, Chris Jones, closed out the game. One thing that I thought the broadcast did a really great job of, and I'm probably going to try to write about this week. There's so many players I want to write about. I want to write about just today the joy of Kelce and Mahomes. We'll see if I have time for it. Day job's been a bit of a bear, and like I said, I'm a little under the weather. But I also want to write this week about Chris Jones. The broadcast did a nice job demonstrating throughout the game and talking about how he was affecting things, even when he wasn't racking up stats. And then all of a sudden, he started racking up stats. And the value in Jones isn't just the statistical stuff you can see. The way he affects the game, that's a big deal. Both of those things, they're huge. However, the biggest thing with Chris Jones is that he is a singular type of defensive player, although there's a few. So singular is maybe the wrong word, but he's able to take over individual drives or individual snaps in a way that almost no one else can. And so if you want an easy example, it's the very last drive for the Chargers. They only had about 35, 37 seconds left, something like that. But they did have 2 timeouts. Only needed a field goal to tie it. We've seen the Chiefs do more with less. There's time. However, there wasn't, because Justin Herbert thought he'd be able to scramble up the middle. I've heard people think that was a QB draw, and I haven't seen whether the coaches commented on that or not. But given the coverage that was being played there, it might have been an easy way to steal 15, 20 yards and get a quick timeout. And now there's 30 seconds left, and now you're at, the 45 or something. So it actually isn't something that I completely hate. But Jones was smart enough to understand where there was going to be a gap. Collinsworth talked about this pretty well, and he immediately beats the guard and kills the play. That forces them to burn one of their timeouts. Now they're in a completely different situation with a little less time left and only one timeout. And every one of those things, it just squeezes a team tighter and tighter. And the next play, the final play of the game, it's worth noting that even though Jones didn't collect a sack, his instant pressure, and then shout out to Mike Dana, who played a heck of a game in his own right, really took advantage of the opportunities he was given. They get huge pressure on Herbert. He forces a throw down the field, pick, game over. Well, tip, pick, game over. Chris Jones should be fully in the conversation, him and Micah Parsons, as the defensive player of the year, because they are guys who can take over games and dramatically affect the outcome. And then in those biggest, most high pressure moments, they make plays. And sometimes there are things that you can quantify, which is what you can do with Chris Jones. If you want to look at win rate or someone, the pressures, hits, sacks, that sort of thing, that can be quantified. But the ability to take over games, that gives you that non-quantifiable thing as well. And it's just so much fun to watch. Another storyline to keep an eye on this week, from my perspective, is the pass rush in general. They got after Justin Herbert last night in a way that they didn't necessarily in their first matchup. You actually saw a fair amount of pressure coming from non-Jones players. Now, part of it was because of the attention Jones drew, but you also saw some nice reps from Karlaftis, from Frank Clark, from Mike Dana, from Carlos Dunlap, from Colin Saunders. You saw some good reps. Is it terribly consistent? No. You got Chris Jones as your star there, but all they need is a few other guys game by game to step up and play at an above average level, just a little above average. And you can really start getting things cooking. Spags did a great job applying pressure in his own right. That's where a lot of it came from. Certain blitzes, some of the stunts that they run up front, they're hard to defend. And one thing about the players the Chiefs currently have in the pass rush, and I might try to write about this week as well, like I said, there's a lot to write about, is that even though Karlaftis isn't winning as much one-on-one as he'd like, although, again, he had a few nice reps against the Chargers, and Carlos Dunlap, Frank Clark, they're all guys who execute what Spags likes to do up front really well. And that makes a difference. The ability to do that. Mike Dana, he does that really, really well, some of those stunts. And that matters. It matters a lot in terms of coming up with pressure outside of Jones. So that's something that to keep an eye on this week in terms of what people are talking about. Isaiah Pacheco is another one. I wrote 3 or 4 weeks about how he was appearing to start to see the field a little bit differently, how he was starting to make his cuts at the appropriate time, his cutbacks at the appropriate time, that he was seeing where to go, that he was being a little more patient following the hole. We saw some of that against the Chargers. And his running style is just hard to deny. His talent, his speed, his explosion. It's all a lot of fun to watch. He's a guy that I think should get a lot of shine this week, along with fellow rookie Sky Moore, who didn't have a dominant statistical day, but came up with some huge catches in a game where they absolutely needed someone who could win against man coverage or find a soft spot in the zone, come up with a few contested, tough catches. Sky Moore did just that. And that was really, really good to see because, Chiefs fans have been getting pretty impatient with him. He's a second-round pick. There's a lot of hype, including for people like me. So it was great to see him stepping out. Another thing that I think, and again, so many storylines this week, but something that I thought was really interesting that might go towards what's going to happen long-term in Los Angeles. Andy Reid and the coaching staff basically pantsed the Chargers in the second half of that game. The Chargers were able to kind of keep the lead for a while and do a few things, but it was largely because of a fumble. The Chiefs had a chance to really extend that lead out. And I would just note that this doesn't seem to be, it seems to be a pattern that when the Chiefs play the Chargers under Staley, they generally outplay them by a pretty wide margin in the second half. And that's a sign of a coaching disparity there. Now, Andy Reid's better than a lot of coaches. Steve Spagnuolo is better than a lot of coaches. But the Chargers have to at least be asking themselves, if they've had this talented a roster year after year after year, why do they keep underachieving? And eventually the finger's going to get pointed back to Staley. And I just think it's a cool thing to talk about in terms of a storyline this week for the Chiefs is the way that their coaching staff is able to take advantage of some things, make some improvements in the second half, and really come out. And they didn't quite dominate the game in the second half, but they came close. And you had a fumble away from really putting that game away much, much earlier than what it ended up happening. Which, by the way, Jerick McKinnon, you haven't fumbled in years. It's all right. You've made a lot of big plays this year. A final thing, and this is more of a celebration than anything, like I started off with. Yeah, I'm owning these colors the way the Chiefs own the AFC West. They're well on their way. They're 8-2. Their closest competition right now is the Chargers, who are at 5-5, and the Chiefs have the tiebreaker. So the Chiefs are essentially 4 games up on the Chargers. They can't tie. They'd have to essentially lose 4 more than the Chargers do the rest of the way for the Chargers to take over the division, and there are 7 games left. Is that impossible? Absolutely not. Is it likely? I don't think so. The Raiders, they had a big win, I guess, but everyone else in the AFC West is kind of an afterthought right now, barring going on, a 7-game win streak. And even then, the Chiefs would really have to stumble. Is that impossible? Again, of course not. Those things happen. But really, the Chiefs have just dominated the AFC West over the course of the Mahomes era. And it has been so much fun to watch. And so I just think it's a great day to celebrate. It's a great day to be a Chiefs fan, even if you're a sick Chiefs fan. So I appreciate you guys watching. I appreciate you guys following along. And this week, we're going to have a lot of fun things to write about and talk about here. Like I said, it's a great week to be a Chiefs fan.